From WATE 6 on your side, a special presentation. East Tennessee's Hidden History, honoring Black history.
From a world-class athlete born and raised in Roane County to a painter who went on to forge connections with legends of the Harlem Renaissance, WATE 6 on your side is proud to honor Black history with a look at the contributions of African Americans in our community. Join us now for a look at East Tennessee's Hidden History. Good evening, everyone. I'm anchor Tirsa Smith. On this day set aside to honor the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we're spotlighting the stories of African Americans from East Tennessee. We begin with a hometown girl, born and raised in Kingston. She grew up to be a veteran women's basketball player, and in the midst of integration, Carolyn Bush Roddy built a star-studded career in women's sports.
I have to give my grandmother a lot of credit too, because she was such an influence on my life. She was a motivator. She was a disciplinarian. She was my everything.
Determination and inspiration would end in a storied career for Carolyn Bush Roddy.
But she always told us, you can do and be anything that you want to be. Just don't be afraid of failure.
Roddy is a 2019 Women's Basketball Hall of Fame inductee. Her career started at Roane County High School.
I was the first Black to ever play at Roane County High School. It was integration.
She recalls being shunned from entering a restaurant with her team because of her color.
My coach, Freddie Paul Wilson, I love him to death. He said, if she can't go in, the rest of the team's not going in. And we started to get back on the bus.
Her skills would take her to Hiwassee Junior College in '72, where she would dominate. While at Hiwassee, she was awarded the Tigerette Award, Best Defensive Player, Best Offensive Player, and MVP of the National Junior College Tournament. And she was a National Junior College Athletic Association All-American, not once, but twice. On top of her collegiate success, she was an Olympic team finalist, as well as a gold medalist in the 1975 Pan American Games.
I played with Pat. I played against Pat. My first encounter with Pat was at the East and West All-Star game at Stokely.
Yeah, that's the one. Legendary Lady Vols coach Pat Summitt.
At first we weren't, because she didn't like me and I didn't like her.
But eventually they formed a friendship.
We played on the 1975 Pan American team together, the international team together. I went to her basketball camp. She allowed me to be a coach at her summer camp for 28 years.
Roddy went on to play for the Dallas Diamonds in the Women's Professional Basketball League.
Everything in my life has been in God's plan.
After retirement in 1982, Roddy went on to coach at several schools and has been an advocate for female athletes. Now, last year, she was one of 7 women celebrated in downtown Knoxville, as their names now forever hold a place in the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. Roddy telling us how important that moment was to her.
This has been the most remarkable experience I've had in a while. The first remarkable experience was my grandmother. Second was meeting my husband. The third was having my children. And basketball has just been my life.
Her service to others continues to this day. Bush Roddy can currently be found working as a case manager for individuals with special needs. While we celebrate the accomplishments of African American history in this area, we must also confront a painful legacy of oppression as Black people faced violence at the hands of their own neighbors. 1919 earned the name Red Summer, with racial violence in communities across our country, including here in Knoxville. Here, the violence followed the death of a young white woman. Maurice Mays, a prominent Black business owner, was arrested and charged with the crime. A lynch mob of about 5,000 people looting the county jail in search of Mays. The mob met with a gun battle and Knoxvillians died. Over this past summer, 100 years later, Knoxville's Carpetbag Theater put on a production of a drama named for that red summer at the Bijou Theater, saying this is, quote, a story we cannot allow to die. From the chaos of that moment in 1919, another moment almost 50 years later, which brought the death of a man who meant so much to the civil rights struggle, and a man we remember on this day, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Again, here is a Tennessee tie. In history class, we learned that Dr. King was assassinated at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. Less well remembered, but crucial to understanding King, is why he was there. The civil rights icon had come to Memphis supporting striking city sanitation workers, protesting after the deaths of 2 African-American garbage collectors, a tragedy that highlighted the plight of black workers facing a dangerous job for low wages. Their efforts in Memphis fit with King's Poor People's Campaign, seen as the next chapter in his push for equality, demanding fair pay, unemployment benefits, and education. A little more than a decade later, in East Tennessee connection, James Earl Ray, the man convicted of King's murder, escaping from Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in 1977. WATE interviewed Ray after he was recaptured, Ray insisting to his death that he did not do it. And here in Knoxville, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commemorative Commission hosting events throughout the week leading up to the national holiday and the annual MLK Day Parade, honoring the legacy and aiming to keep the dream alive. A social justice center that calls East Tennessee home faced a setback, a fire, then a disturbing symbol found in the ashes. The fire happening at the Highlander Research and Development Center in New Market. Afterwards, the organization announcing graffiti connected with the White Power movement found in a parking lot. The group's director says the symbol looks like a 3x3 hashtag that was used by a far-right anti-Semitic movement in Romania during the 1930s. More recently, the symbol was found on the gun used during a mass shooting in New Zealand. An investigation was launched, but no official connection was made to any person or group. For decades, Highlander has served as an adult education center for community workers, hoping to bring social and economic justice to local communities. The work attributed to the center is celebrated today, but during some of its most controversial times in the 60s, it was seen as a threat to the segregated way of life that many Americans weren't ready to change. Driving around, you've likely noticed those historical markers that tell the story of the people, places, and events in Tennessee. The program started in the 1940s, and there are more than 2,000 statewide. The Tennessee Historical Commission has taken special care to also mark the contributions of African Americans. The commission has published 2 guides, one of which highlights those markers relative to the heritage of African Americans. The book breaks down where markers can be found by county and tells their stories. The commission and other vendors sell that book for about $3. Still to come, more stories of blacks from East Tennessee and the mark they've left on our history. Coming up, we trace the life of an acclaimed Knoxville-born artist who forged a friendship with a literary legend and became one of the greatest painters of the Harlem Renaissance. Plus, pioneers in desegregating American schools and their groundbreaking effort happening right in our backyard. We're honoring the Clinton 12. And next, a school born from the civil rights movement working to meet the needs of young people today. You're watching East Tennessee's Hidden History on WATE 6 on your side.